You're listening to Finding Your Genius Zone with Dirk Nevelle. With the help of successful individuals across industries, Dirk breaks down the unknown parts of every vocation while highlighting the importance of finding a career where you can leverage your natural skills, passions, and interests. Now here's your host, Dirk Nevelle.
Hey everybody, this is Dirk Nevelle. Welcome to my podcast. On with me today is a friend of mine, and I call him a partner, Spencer King. Spencer, welcome.
Thank you, Dirk. Pleasure to be here. I know you've been trying to pin me down for a while, so I'm glad we finally had a chance to do this.
I know. I think you had a little stint there in Italy, and you're getting busy. And when I say partner, I'm in the lending world, and Spencer is in the real estate world as a real estate agent. So we've worked together, and that just a little backdrop with Spencer. I want to say it was maybe 7-8 years ago. We had a mutual friend, and she said, "You got to meet this guy. You guys have a lot of similarities." And just, I think you had just finished your book, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But I remember meeting Spencer, and then life happens, and then we kind of connected a couple years ago. And anyways, I love working with you, Spencer. I know you're really good at what you do. I'm excited to have you on because I think you have a very diverse background that is going to be interesting for the audience to listen to. So why don't we just start with, why don't you I know you've been in the real estate world for about 6 years. Why don't you just kind of talk to the audience, because they're going to be coming in hot based on what you do now. So talk to the audience about what it is you do.
Yeah, so I'm in real estate, as Dirk mentioned. It's something that if you love to work, and we're all looking for something we love to do in life. I heard an interview years ago with Sylvester Stallone, and the question was, how can you become successful in life? And his answer was, he looked right in the camera and said, find what you love and just do it, and the money will follow. And I think that advice has probably been kind of, repeated over the years, but that resonated with me for a long time. And I realized that if you do chase the money, it's harder to get ahead. But if you really try to serve and do something for people, you fall into something that you love, and the money really does follow. So being a real estate broker, it's definitely what you put in is what you get out. So, I mean, for example, my days, I start early in the mornings, usually around 6. I get up, I don't touch my phone or my computer for at least a good half hour or so. I use that time to either just reflect or meditate or read or just get myself centered before I begin my day. And once I do begin, though, it's a 7-day-a-week job for a good broker. And there's a lot of work that's keeping you busy, but there's a lot of work you create on your own. And you're constantly trying to stay ahead all the time. So for me, I don't work anymore. To me, this is like a hobby that I just thoroughly enjoy, and I love people. I love the whole process.
So what would you say you love about it the most? I mean, I know there's a lot of components to your profession, but what would you say, like when you think about Genius Zone, what makes you good at what you do?
That's a great question.
I guess I asked you 2 questions. I'm sorry. I said, what do you love most about it? And then what makes you good? So maybe you can answer both.
Yeah, I think I've spent some time in the corporate environment early on in my career, and it wasn't for me out of the gate. So one of the reasons I love about it is what it's not. It's not corporate. You basically are your own boss. You do what you want, how you want, and when you want. And my only function in life right now in my real estate career is to make sure my clients are well taken care of. And if I know they're taken care of, and there's many ways I like to do that, then I can sleep well at night. What makes me good at my job, I think, you go to a lot of the seminars or sales trainings, and there's always those conversations about differentiating factors, or your value proposition and all these things. And yes, those things are important, but I think when it comes down to it, if you're just authentically who you are, the things that you do well surface, and you come across as real to your people. And I think in this age, there's so much of trying to be something that you're not, no one lives the perfect life. But if you can just be who you are, you can really excel at anything you choose. So, logistically, the things that I like to do is in a real estate transaction, for example, 20 or 25 people will be involved in that transaction, and people don't really realize that. By the time it's the 2 brokers and the sellers and the buyers and the lender and the appraisal and the inspections, and it just goes on and on. Many people can touch that. So what I try to do always is be a step ahead of all those things and making sure not that they do their jobs, but just consistently follow up. I want my client experience to be seamless, completely perfect as it can. So that means I'm always trying to check and make sure things are being covered and done as they should. And I can give you examples of that, but being ahead of the curve, I think is huge. And communication in this business is huge, not just for the clients, but also the other brokers. And I'm like an Uber communicator. I just want to make sure everyone knows what's going on all the time so no surprises come up. So I think between communicating, being authentic, and being ahead of the game, that's kind of my secret sauce.
Yeah. We're both in businesses where I would say, I don't know how to say this, but the barriers to entry aren't great. I mean, there's a lot of people that do what we do. And I don't, I'm in the lending side of it. So you have to always, if you're watching Spencer right now, and we're going to get in, this is something Spencer's been doing his whole career, which I think is actually a benefit because I think you've learned a lot in your life with other careers that probably makes you better at what you do. But as far as differentiating, I mean, there's a lot of competition, right? There's a lot of options for people. What would you say? I mean, you just gave us a couple things that you do well, but if there was one thing that, people talked about you in terms of you got to work with Spencer because, what would you say that is? Is it the communication?
I'm going to come back to the authenticity. I mean, I just am who I am. And again, I can list the things that make me, I just follow my heart. Okay. I do what I think is right. I mean, I was raised the right way. I do a lot of reading. I mentioned meditation earlier. There's a lot of things that keep me in line. But I think innately I'm just that guy. And I mean, who you're listening to right now is who I am. And so I just do everything I can to be true to myself. And I think by doing that, those types of opportunities gravitate toward me. So the right people, the right opportunities come to me because I am simply who I am.
You mentioned like the corporate experience you had prior. Can you take us back that feeling or feelings you had that maybe felt like, I don't feel like this is it. Like there's something that doesn't feel right. I don't fit. What was that?
Well, I think as souls having a human experience, we're meant to be creative every day. And I was not meant to sit in a cubicle. And I felt very confined in that. I did love the work I was doing. And for political reasons, way above my pay grade back in those days, the project I worked on so hard and finally got approved, it was a medical company I was working for. I was a liaison between the company and the FDA. It was my function to get this medical device approved, which is a huge undertaking. And now I was just a cog in the wheel. I worked with the top 1% of scientists, physicians, statisticians, FDA attorneys, the best of the best. And it was my job to kind of pull all that information together and submit it to the FDA. And even though we were doing great things and getting medical devices approved and literally saving lives, once we got approved and went to market, it became all about money at that point.
Right.
And that was kind of a moment for me where I thought, this may not be the right place for me. So I ended up, that was in Pennsylvania at the time, and I decided to come back home to Seattle and go to work for a small golf shoe company, which was the antithesis of typical corporate America. So I think when those politics started kicking in, I realized that was not the place for me to be.
Yeah, I can relate. I've been in corporate world. I don't want to say I'm dangerous because I'm not political, but I'm not political. Like I'm kind of an individual. If you've ever, I'm a big fan of those personality tests, and one in particular is called the Enneagram. And if you know that one, I'm a type 4, which is individual. And I bring that up because I think if you're listening to Spencer and you're kind of listening and thinking about yourself in terms of, what environment would I do well in? The real estate world that Spencer's in, he's his own boss, and he can elaborate, but I think it's interesting for you to maybe touch on the freedom. There's also, if you're not successful, you're not going to make a living, you're not going to make money. So there's pressure too, but being your own boss, I would think that's pretty important to you.
It is very important. I've worked under other sales managers in the past outside of the real estate industry that You're going to have unreasonable expectations, and that pressure that comes down on you day after day after day when they haven't been in the streets for 10 years.
Yeah.
I just didn't like that feeling. So I know what's best for me. I know how I work well. I also know where my deficiencies are, and I have no problem admitting those and asking for help in areas that I need those, because you're never successful on your own. You always need help from, at least in this business, with your transaction coordinator or your lenders that you work with, whomever. You're always, I guess, doing everything you can to keep yourself in the best place possible. And as an entrepreneur, you have to do the work yourself. You have to beat your own drum every day. You have to get up. You have to do the work every day. And you're constantly looking for that next vein of business. So there's a lot of responsibility behind all of that. But again, if you love it, it's not work. You just get up and do it every day, and the results come.
I hear you. So let's go backwards a little bit. I've traveled a lot in my life as well. Spencer went to college in Germany. He's fluent. He can write perfectly. You've had a lot of exposure to other cultures, other people, seeing the world through a different lens. Can you speak to that in terms of just how you draw on that and maybe the benefits of how it's served you in the career that you're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a topic I really love. So my mom is German. My dad is American. He's from Pennsylvania. And the opportunity they afforded me as a young person, my sister as well. I mean, we were in Germany every other year until I was 14 years old. So I grew up with the language. I learned to walk there. I loved going there. It was always summer vacations. And the years we weren't going there, my grandparents were coming here. So travel has always been a huge part of my life. And what I didn't really realize until later was how much that really opened my mind. So I've gone through my whole life not just having my own opinions, but waiting to hear the opinions or thoughts of other people, understanding how important flexibility has become in my life. And when you have an open mind, you end up leading a richer life in all categories. And whenever I come across, in my business, I work with all cultures, for example, and it doesn't matter to me who you are or where you're from. I know that I can fit in with that person in their culture because I'm wide open to it. I'm flexible to how they operate, and I love that. And I give that advice to every young person I come across. If you're just getting out of high school or considering leaving high school, or you're just getting out of college and getting into the workforce, as much as you want to go out there and earn or get into a college, take that time. You have very few opportunities in life where you can actually transition. So in other words, you're coming out of high school, instead of going right into college, take that gap year and go travel someplace. And if you don't have a language that you already know, that's fine. You can go to Australia or Canada or England, wherever. But if you go someplace like France or England or Germany, not England, but a foreign-speaking country, and you immerse yourself in there, not just go to where all the American bars are, but you immerse yourself into that culture, your background becomes so diverse. When you come back home after something like that, and all of your friends, you're maybe a year behind on the calendar, but you're light years ahead of everybody else in terms of who you are as a human being. So I love that topic. And I think anytime you can get out of this country and go see something else, it's a great world out there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. My background in college was international studies. It was a Jackson School at University of Washington. And I had to study my butt off to get good grades. But I always loved traveling. My dad was a pilot, so I traveled all over the world for free with him.
Nice.
And so I think the thing that's interesting when I listen to you is I was always curious about people and cultures. And I feel like you have that same curiosity, which I think works really well in sales, whether you're selling medical or whatever, or you're selling real estate. So if you're listening to Spencer and you're kind of trying to figure it out, I think the curiosity is really important if you have that. Spencer sells to, so there's business, B2C, B2B, business to consumers, business to business. So when you're thinking about sales, real estate is a business to consumer. So what that means is Spencer can work with anybody he bumps into on the street, family, friends, people he went to college with. Do you feel, would you enjoy a B2B type role, or do you feel like you were made for the B2C?
Definitely B2C. In this business, you have to put yourself out there. Marketing is huge, and in the digital age, it's made things much easier and more diverse in terms of how you get your name out there. But when it comes down to it, I'm much better belly to belly. I've done B2B before, and that's fine, but it's always been about the bottom line, and the relationships, sometimes they play a role, but not as much as you'd like. In the B2C category, you can really hone in on your clients and really learn and really listen to them. And, we talked about secret sauce earlier. I think that's a big piece for me. I really do. I think I do a great job of just listening to my clients, because I'm just not waiting to speak. I'm listening. So you can deepen that connection as far as you want. I mean, most of my clients become friends, so I think it's super important, just kind of follow your heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I had a comment from somebody that said a lot of my interviews are adult to adult talks, and so some of the audience may not relate. But I think it's really important to think about who you're selling to. Do you know them? Is there a natural stickiness, a connection? Or are you selling? Like, I used to work for Mark Cuban, and I worked for broadcast.com. We became part of Yahoo, and I was selling to people I'd never hang out with. It just VPs of marketing, CFOs across the country. And then when I got into lending, is like game on. Anybody I knew or know was a client. And so I think it's important to think like that, because I wasn't thinking like that when I was younger. You've had all this life experience. What's the biggest surprise of being a realtor? Like, you've been in it 6 years. I know you've done a lot of business. What caught you off guard?
That's another good question. When I came into the business, it was popping. I mean, homes were flying off at record numbers, record prices, and it was not difficult. I mean, if you were on the seller side, you sold your house the day you listed it, basically. If you were a buyer, yeah, there were challenges because you had to compete to get those, but people were still being able to purchase. When things slowed down last June, and everyone kind of slowed the whole pace, and as well as anybody, the rate fluctuations and how they've risen and all those things. When we got into November, December, when things really slowed down, and I would do open houses, brand new construction, beautiful homes. Yes, the prices were going down, but I was really shocked that buyers who'd been waiting for 2 or 3 years, who didn't want to compete and way overpay, who were now face to face with opportunities to buy a house, the one that works for them, at this reduced price. And they kept on saying they want to see how far down it's going to go. And I understand that thinking, yes, but at the same time, here's your chance. You've been waiting for 2 years not to compete. Now you can buy this house today. So that was a little surprising to me. And people just weren't willing to pull the trigger. I think they were just in shock, that intense market, all of a sudden slam on the brakes, rates go up, and they didn't really know what to think. And, again, coming from my authentic self, I feel like I'm always speaking the truth. So I thought, why aren't they listening? Why aren't they pulling the trigger now when they could? Because things they've already started going up from January. So that for me was a little surprising.
Yeah, no, I get that. What do you think, just when you look around, I know you work for a really good company. There's a lot of great producers. What would you say are maybe 2 or 3 things that are crucial in terms of being good at what you do? And I know you're a humble guy, but you probably have those traits. But to give somebody younger an idea of what it takes to be successful with so many people in this industry, what are those 2 or 3 things?
Okay, I would say first, don't listen to anybody outside of your managing broker and your true mentors, people who have your best interests in mind. There's a lot of people out there that build a negative picture. They can complain about rates or complain about inventory all day long, but you're not going to have success if you're complaining about anything. So only listen to those people who are giving you positive support, positive feedback. Real feedback is fine too. Constructive criticism is fine, but I think listening to the right people is going to be is the first thing. This is not $1 million listing. It's not fancy lunches and big commission checks, every day. It takes a long time to get to that point. I mean, go out and try to find a $6 million buyer right now. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So you have to come with a work ethic. And if you have that and you work every day, good things will happen, So it's important just to stay on your game every day. I look at new listings 3 or 4 times a day. I look at all the market data all day long. I don't spend a lot of time, wasted time on my phone, if you know what I mean. But at a red light, I'm looking at, pending sales. So, or I'm meditating. I'll do a 30-second meditation. It depends, but always trying to, keep myself aligned with those that are doing well. I think if you can seek out people, when I first started, I walked into my managing broker's office and said, who are the best brokers in the building? And they gave me a handful of names, and I introduced myself, bought them coffee, listened and learned, did open houses for them. And I still do. And I think that piece alone is willing to listen and willing to learn, willing to be a sponge, regardless of how old you are and what you've done in the past, I think is critical.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really important. I heard, so, this has probably been said many times, but you kind of are who you are in terms of who you surround yourself with. And so I would say for somebody younger, be very aware of the voices that are being fed to you, like who your peers are, your friends, and try to really be around people who are positive, and not that are just telling you all the things you want to hear, but people who have your best interest. Because I think you are who you hang out with. And I mean, I always try to, I'm in a coaching group with people who are better at my job than me, because I'm always learning. And by the way, you said something really interesting. I had a podcast with one of the top, her team is one of the top teams in the country. And she's like, there's many times where I'm cleaning the toilets of a house, a $20 million home that's not, perfect. Like you'd be shocked at the things that I do. And so in my mind, I think about grit and just like, the hard work and the reality TV shows in LA. I mean, that's probably, you guys must just shake your head on those things. But let's go backwards a little bit. In 2016, you wrote a book. I want to hear a little more about it, why you wrote it, what's come of it, what's the overall message of this book?
So the book is called Fresh Beliefs, Keeping to Your Spiritual Path. And, up until it was probably my late 30s, I'd kind of blissfully just gone through life living, day to day. And, you plan for the future, you work as hard as you can, you do all those things. And, my mom walked in my front door one day and she handed me a VCR tape, and it was The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. So it was the introduction for me to the law of attraction. And I found it very interesting. I liked it. I began reading other content, and Esther Hicks, the Abraham, things like that. And I was reading one night, which I do every night. And I just remember closing the book and said, I get this now. I know how to do this. And I put it aside, but I kind of went back to regular life and I stopped actually day-to-day practice. That resulted in a massive deviation from that path. I made some really poor decisions, got myself in a bad place, ended up, my marriage fell apart, my business wasn't doing well, all those kinds of things. And then I found myself walking the trail. I was living in Snoqualmie, and I would walk the Snoqualmie Valley Trail every day. And then I just had this feeling to go back and read this book that my mom had given me 14 years prior, and that was Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. Went back to the house. It was one of those blustery, windy days in November, and I sat on the couch and I read it cover to cover in about an hour and a half. It's a short read, but I was nodding my head constantly throughout, like, I get this. And when I lifted my head after I closed the book, I look up and I had my awakening. I realized that everything in my life was my doing, but I can also influence that and undo those things or move forward in a healthier way. I mean, I can still see the room today. It was just laced in gold. It was an amazing experience. And that I probably hung in there for 3 or 4 minutes. It felt like 2 or 3 hours, but those moments, if you've had them, don't really last that long. But what it did is it catapulted me into spirituality, and just all the content, all the movies. Oprah was doing Super Soul Sunday back then, and I really got deep into it. And my life just started shifting. I started practicing things that resonated with me. And then, I woke up one day and a friend said, hey, thanks for that word of advice. And, those things started to mount, and I started feeling really good about things. And I was back on the trail again, and all of a sudden I'm walking, and this same voice just kind of came back to me, and it said, show them how to keep to the path. And in that moment, I knew I was going to write a book. And so I raced back home, grabbed a pad of paper, and I just started writing single lines, ideas, tools, techniques, things that resonated with me. And out of those some themes started to arise out of it. And those became then chapters. And I just sat down and started writing. I'd never really written before, some short stories for myself and family, but nothing published, no formal training of any kind. So during that process, I'm going through some workshops, and I'm learning some things so the book would make sense. And in the end, what Fresh Beliefs really are the tools and techniques that I used that helped me keep to my path. And if you keep to your path as best you possibly can, your life will unfurl the way you want it to. And so it was a wonderful exercise, a very vulnerable one too, because I remember sitting back one day going, oh my gosh, this is actually me on a platter right now. And I'm about to put it out to the world. And it was kind of a scary feeling at first, but I thought, well, hey, this is what I'm here to do. And the reason I say that is because when you start studying your real purpose in life, your real dharma, it's not always what you do for profession. It's how you serve, how you really give back to your fellow, animals, environment, friends, family, everybody, how you give back. And so this became my dharma, was just to show people how to keep to the path. And so the book came out in January of 2017, did really well out of the gate, didn't pay the bills. So I had to make sure I had to keep working, hence my jump into real estate. But it's always a part of my life, and it is my end game. As I continue to do well in real estate, I can start focusing more on that part of my life and get that really up and running again.
How would you translate that book? I know there's some alignment with kind of what I'm doing on this podcast as far as helping people get clear on their journey, their pathway. Like whether it's a chapter or a line or something, like how would you translate that to say a 26, 25-year-old, young woman, young man that's struggling, that's got a lot of voices in their head. They're thinking about paying off debt. They're thinking about what looks good on social media. Their mom wants them to be a doctor. Their dad wants them to be an attorney. They have friends moving to Wall Street. Those voices can get confusing and they can make you numb. What would you say? I mean, is there any messages in your book that would align well or help maybe that audience get clear on choosing their life work?
Yeah, no one's ever asked me that before. That's really cool. Your greatest asset is your awareness, and your greatest tool is your ability to make healthy emotional adjustments. So if you can learn how to respond to things as opposed to react, we overthink all day, every day, and that's why we react. And many times it's not the best reaction. But if you can take a moment, let's say someone's irritated with you and they're coming at you with something. If in those moments while you're hearing those words, you're saying to yourselves, just stay cool, stay in the moment. This person's obviously bothered by something. How can I help them? Stay cool. Stay as long as it just keeps you from redlining, right? It keeps you in a good place, and then start crafting a response. And before you speak, take a moment just to take a breath, and then gently respond with grace. And hopefully there's no birth of an argument. You can help that person through the process. They need to feel heard. So let them vent, but then go through that kind of self-talk that just keeps you in a good place, as opposed to building your defenses and firing back. So I think, making those adjustments along the way are really healthy.
It's funny. I have a handout, a flyer for this podcast. And it's phase 2. I just haven't got to it, but there's this, I want to do like these baseball card thumbnail of each guest, like your favorite movie, favorite food, whatever, those baseball cards when you're little that you saved, and favorite quote. And my favorite quote is Viktor Frankl. And it's about the moment, and I'll Tommy boy this and butcher it, but the time between stimulus and reaction. And basically what it says is the longer you can extend that in terms of reacting right away, is your That's your freedom. I apologize. Look it up, Viktor Frankl quotes. I should know it, but I love what you're saying because I can really relate. But again, for a 25-year-old, you said that awareness is, did you say aware?
Is your greatest asset. And in the end, if you want to go really deep, this is a different conversation, but we are awareness. It's who we are. We just allow all the other stuff to kind of take over us, if you will. But that's your greatest asset, and the greatest tool is your ability to make healthy emotional adjustments.
Okay. So so why you answer this question, I have to get this quote. So I'm going to look it up so I can give it to you because I think you'd really like it. But so someone's listening, they just came out of college, maybe master's, and I don't know if they feel safe, like thinking, becoming aware. Like those aren't things that I thought about when I was younger, right? I was thinking about what would make my dad proud of me. And, he was always comparing me to people and with money and very shallow stuff. So I was kind of all about, making money, which is, I'm embarrassed to say, but how do you become aware at that age with all these voices in your head? Any thoughts or advice to somebody that's listening right now?
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm 58 years old, and I grew up at a time without cell phones and without the internet. And so it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of someone who's younger, who's only grown up with that.
Yep.
The bottom line, though, is attention spans are not what they used to be. So if you can get yourself just to give an extra moment or two, I think that will go a long way.
Okay. So thinking about what I would, let me go back in time. And I never thought about I love coaching and I love my freedom. I don't like politics. I don't like having a boss. I'm a go-getter. I don't like being capped compensation wise. These are things and even a negative of my job is I never thought about an annuity income. I never thought about commercial insurance or financial services where you build a book of business and you get paid on it. I wish somebody, and this is kind of why I started this podcast, I wish someone would have gotten in my head and said, okay, you wanted to get into residential lending, realize you're going to be starting over. And I'm not at all being the victim or speaking negatively, but these aren't things young adults and people are thinking about. And so I guess to ask again, the advice on you meditate, you get clear, you get out of your head into your heart. Someone that's listening thinking, I don't really understand what they're talking about, or it seems a little woo-woo. Can you get another stab at helping somebody that's just hey, Spencer, I don't know what the heck I want to do. What should I go do? Should I go journal? Should I go travel for a year? I mean, maybe they don't have the resources to go travel internationally, but is there something somebody could do just on a budget to help them maybe make a better decision?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so what you begin to realize later on in life is that we are always learning. You never have things totally dialed in. You can be content, but you're never totally dialed in. So I love to listen to other people. I love to gather knowledge. I love to try to grow. So if you're a young person, you don't know it all. And if you are someone who really wants to succeed, genuinely wants to succeed, listen to the people that came before you. Whether it's this podcast, Dirk is doing amazing things with all the guests he's bringing on, whether it's people that you see, on programs or just books that you pick up. If someone says, read this book, they think you're going to benefit from it. So read the book. And you don't have to understand everything all the time, but if something you come across resonates, absolutely, there's a voice speaking to you. Don't ignore those things. Jump into it all the way and just really begin to apply the lessons. It goes so far beyond what you learn in school. It's all about who came before you, because everybody who's trying to help you really does have your best interest in mind. And it may not seem right to you. Not every piece of advice is going to be the right piece, but at least give it credence, give it the respect that it deserves. If it doesn't work for you, fine, move on to the next thing. But the more of this you do, the more clarity you will have. And one day it just will hit you. I went to school to studied, business and economics, and I couldn't even begin to talk to you about economics right now. We all do things in life that we really didn't necessarily went to school for. right? So you never know what you're going to end up doing, and you never know who's going to come across your path. So eyes wide open to information and people.
I love it. All right, I'm still trying to find this quote because I really think. Okay, here we go. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Perfect.
And I wrote a book on road rage. So I've come a long way. I've evolved.
Yeah.
I didn't have road rage. I can get angry sometimes, but I love that just because I found myself, especially with my coach, who's become one of my closest friends, is just how I can be reactive. I've got a little fire in me, but I'm also sensitive, and I think I'm pretty evolved. But I've noticed that when I get triggered, and in my job, you get stress, you get triggered but the longer it takes to react, I find that typically that's a good thing.
It is. And I think what's really important too, when it does happen to you, the first thing you say to yourself is like, oh my God, why did I do that? Because you've been practicing responding throughout the years. Now all of a sudden one day you just have a moment where you don't respond at all, you just react. And the first thought I have when I do that is, oh my God, where'd that come from? So but then you correct it as quickly as you can.
I love it. Okay, so you've done all these things. You went to the Virgin Islands for a year. I think you had a lot. You traveled with backpacking. I wouldn't ever probably. My guess is you would never want to do it differently. But if you could go back in time, you're coming out of college in Germany, knowing what you know now, would you have tweaked it at all differently? Would you have gotten into real estate sooner? Is there anything that you would have done differently?
Looking back at my young life in high school, I wish I would have worked harder in school. As a 3.0 student, didn't really try that hard. So I do wonder, had I put real effort into it, would other opportunities have come my way? I think about that sometimes. Right now it's easy to say I wish I would have started real estate out of the gate. There are a lot of young people who are doing it now that are very successful, that are doing really well. There are people who are been in it for 20 or 30 years. I look at them today and they're titans of the industry. So yeah, I would like to have started that earlier, but by saying that, then there's many other things. I had to go through what I had to go through to get to where I am. And I love my past. I've made some poor personal decisions in my life for sure. I take ownership of those things. But professionally speaking, yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the way things have gone.
Yeah.
To me, 58, but I feel like I'm, 38. I try to stay fit. I keep my head on straight and, work hard every day and expect good things to happen. So I've got a good 30 or 40 years in me still.
You do. If real estate, let's just say, was off the table for some whatever reason, maybe AI takes it over and is there a dream job? And I don't think that's going to happen with real estate, but maybe in lending, but is there a dream job? Like if you could do anything and money wasn't an issue? And I ask this question of all my guests, just because it's interesting for the audience to kind of get a flavor of a different feel for you. And sometimes the answers are very surprising and sometimes they're not. But if there was a dream job, Spencer, what would it be?
Yeah, so I recall being in my early 20s. I was hiking through the Olympic National Park and I saw two very young rangers, and nature has been a part of my life forever. So I always thought, man, why did I do this? I should have been a ranger, because they're in the most beautiful place in the world. Their cheeks are flushed. They're outdoors every day. They know the trails inside and out. So, in my 20s, I kind of wished I had done that. But today, as I mentioned, fresh beliefs. When my new dream job outside of real estate would be building a cottage industry around that book's concept, which I've already outlined completely. I've got coaching programs. I've got everything else built around it already. It's a matter of just launching it, and that day will come. So that's my dream job. That's my purpose, and that's what comes after real estate.
I love it. Is there anything while we wrap this up? Someone that is dead set on being a realtor. Maybe maybe they don't feel very social or connected. They don't have enough people. There could be a million reasons that are causing them to maybe question if it's a good fit. I don't know. Is there just advice you have for somebody that wants to break into a pretty crowded industry?
Yeah, if that's what you feel you want to do, then you definitely should do it. And ask around. There are different brokerages that are out there. They all provide different forms of training, different technical platforms. All managing brokers are very good. You know, they help you along. And I'm happy to help anyone that reaches out. They can call me directly, and we can help them out a little further on that. But as long as you're willing to work, and you're willing to work weekends and love it, it becomes a hobby for you, and you know, you can build your client base. If you don't know one person, you can very easily build a client base the right way. And you know, you can turn any conversation into real estate. And before you know it, you've got a new client, or you go to an open house and you meet people there. If you feel you need to do it, then jump in, and the right people will come into your life to help you.
Do you feel, I guess I have another question. The smaller shops versus the bigger ones like you work for, do you have any advice on which direction somebody should go?
I think that you should go all in. I think that you should, if you want to work for a bigger brokerage firm, I mean, here locally, I mean, Compass is huge, Windermere is big, John L. Scott is great. There are a lot of smaller brokerage firms, but don't minimize your opportunity because you feel like you have to go to a small firm where there's just 6 people. Don't feel like you have to go onto a team to learn the ropes first and then, you know, jump in on your own. If you feel that's right for you, then do that. I had no interest in teams. You know, I mean, I did this later on in life, so it's easier for me to kind of do my thing on my own. But I would definitely recommend walking into a bigger company. John L. Scott is where I started. Their training is tremendous. They're very well known regionally, a very solid company. I moved to Compass mainly because of the platform they offer on the tech side. Makes the marketing pieces a little easier, actually a lot easier. But your fears are your own. So you really have to just kind of sit back and determine how much you want that to determine your choices in life. If you in your heart want to become a real estate broker, absolutely jump in and you know, just walk in the front doors, tell them you want to do this, get your license, and go to work.
Yeah, and maybe even like to expedite the credibility, working with somebody like you or someone who's seasoned. You know, when I got into lending, I didn't really know lending, but I was around really good people, which helped me be credible. There's a lot of questions I didn't know the answers to. So that's also probably a route people can go.
Definitely. And it's not a slight on the smaller brokerage firms. They're also very good and very talented, but I like the bigger ones just because there's more information to draw from. I mean, the hallway conversations you have are wonderful. People put deals together, you know, just literally around the water cooler, you know, so things can come together that quickly. So, yeah, I mean, if it's in your heart, go for it.
Spencer, thanks. I was thinking of something creative in German to say like "Tschüss" or "Auf Wiedersehen," but that's all I got.
Great.
Yeah, you know, I took 3 years of German in college, so I know a little bit. So,
well, I can see it paid off for you.
I will see. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Pleasure. Glad to have you here, and glad you have me.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Bye.